So, leaving a legacy goes beyond your actions today. It is about leaving something positive for the world to remember you by. So, it could be in your actions, what you do and how you are with people. It could be in what you leave, like perhaps in Manu's case, the book, or a piece of art, in a song, something that will outlive you and your wildest imaginations, right?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raving Patients Podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Dr. Len Tau. Super excited for today's episode. I'm sure you'll be after you listen to it. As always, I want to thank my sponsors, both Dental Intelligence and the Doc Sites, for their continued support. Their support allows me to come to your inbox every single Fridays at 5 a.m. Eastern Time with a new episode. I also want to remind everybody about my event. It's just about 4 months away, September 26th and 27th, or September 27th and 28th. In Fort Lauderdale, Florida, at the Pier 66 Resort. It's a brand new resort, just opened up a few weeks ago, featuring some of the best speakers in the industry. Supercharge Your Dental Practice. You can go to superchargeyourdentalpractice.com. And if you're interested in attending, you can save $100 on registration using the code RAVING, R-A-V-I-N-G, when you enter for your registration. Today's episode is entitled Leaving a Legacy. My guest is Parul Dua-Makkar. We're going to be talking about things like discussing oral cancer. We're channeling grief as a provider, dealing with unexpected life challenges, and what it means to be a legacy amongst other items. So before we begin, I'm going to introduce Parul. Parul is a dentist in private practice in Long Island, New York. Her life took a different trajectory when she lost her brother, Dr. Manu Dua, to oral cancer. Since then, she devotes her time advocating for early diagnosis of oral cancer. She is a fellow of the American College of Dentists, has served as the wellness ambassador for the ADA. She's a speaker, author, and has presented on several stages across North America, including ADA SmileCon. She recently keynoted the first ADA's first Oral Cancer Summit. So please welcome to the Raving Patients Podcast, Parul Dua-Makkar. Parul, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Len, for having me. Great to be here.
I'm excited to, so this is kind of a different topic, obviously. It's not really related to business, not really related to marketing, but it's related to life, okay? And obviously, we know everybody deals with different challenges. Everybody deals with different things that happen to them. As you probably know, we lost one of our colleagues, Bob Pick, last week to an unexpected cardiac event. So as I always say, life is short and you want to play hard. So I'm really excited to kind of discuss some of these topics with you. So I think the first question is, and I think it goes to your story, is can you talk about why you started talking about oral cancer and how you got involved and become one of the experts in this space?
So I was pretty content doing my little dentistry in my, four walls. But after losing my brother, who was also a dentist, and he died at the age of 34, so, being diagnosed in his early 30s, and that's not very typical. And when you're in your 30s, that's not what you're thinking, right? You're thinking you're invincible and the world's all there for you to go conquer. Unfortunately, it was cut short, and there were so many things that I, as a general practitioner, didn't know. Manu, being a general practitioner, didn't have a biopsy under the care of oral surgeons and dentists, even though he had a persisting lesion, all the classic signs, and things were missed. Delayed biopsy led to a delayed treatment, and so on and so forth. And we know in oral cancer, early diagnosis is the key. And I mean, the survival rate drops as we get into the higher stages. So having lost Manu changed my perspective of how I wanted to deal with it. Like, I couldn't change losing him. I couldn't, I'm not going to go after the dentist who didn't biopsy him in time. That's not going to gain anything. So my whole incentive was that, I lost Manu, even though he knew what the disease was, he knew what cancer was, and denial was the problem. But we can change the narrative and help save others' lives.
So that makes a whole lot of sense as to how you got in here. So obviously, and I want to talk a little bit about your brother because you made a couple of comments here. Obviously, oral cancer is obviously a common form of cancer. We see it. I've diagnosed, when I was in practice, I diagnosed, I think, 6 or 7 cases in my career, a couple of them worse than others. So can you talk about the early diagnosis, can you talk about like what as a dentist we really need to be aware of? And I want to take it a little more clinical here for a second and kind of talk about things related to, things that are missed, that could be missed, things that a dentist should be doing when they see potential cancerous lesions or something that they are suspecting is potential cancer.
Sure. So first of all, talk to your patient, know what their history is, right? Do they have medical history of cancer in their family? Because certain cancers can metastasize to their jaw. So if they have a cancer history of their own, what their social habits are. They're smoking, vaping. I mean, these are things we ask our patients, right? Vaping is a big deal, especially in the young. Something about HPV, we don't really discuss that in the office, which is the human papillomavirus. Are you vaccinated or not? That might be something you want to put on your medical history. So these are some things. But looking at a patient, the clinical exam doesn't take long. It takes like a minute or two. And you're looking for anything that seems abnormal, that's been a persistent white or red lesion that doesn't rub off for over a period of 2 weeks, whether it's painful or not. There's a misconception that cancer is always painful. No, just like a cavity doesn't hurt, when it's small, unless it gets big, and then it's more of a problem. So, because similar to that, cancer doesn't necessarily hurt. So anything white, problem areas are like the floor of the mouth, the gingiva, the tongue. So you want to look at those lesions and ask the patient, do you know what's going on? Did you bite yourself? Did you hurt? What's this history if the patient's aware? And the patient may say like, yeah, I didn't know that was there. Or they may say, oh yeah, I saw, but I didn't think it was a big deal because I have a broken filling. Look at the things that could be it and bring the patient back for a follow-up for 2 weeks. And if there is something, we live in a digital world, we can take pictures, show the patient, blow it up. Look, this is what I see. I know you don't see that in the back of your mouth, but I see this. This is a concern. Let's get you to an oral surgeon. Let's biopsy you if you think it's, more aggressive than like maybe a dysplasia. So kind of use your clinical judgment on that. And the only way to diagnose is get a biopsy. So either learn to do your biopsies yourself, especially if you're doing implants, you're doing surgical extractions, you can do a biopsy. You can remove a papilloma. You can remove an irritation fibroma. You can do those little things. And so that way you don't delay the treatment and then, have it biopsied as soon as possible.
God, no, that makes sense. And then I've always been someone that's into the technology that's available. And I used a device, I can't even remember what it was called, but obviously there was different, it was almost like a flashlight that had different
like a Valscope?
colors and stuff. Yeah, Valscope, but it was something else. It wasn't Valscope. So is there any type of technology that you actually advocate to use? Or, I know you said when you first started this question, you had said, it's just a couple minutes of spending time looking at the tongue. Do you recommend any technology, or simply just knowing what the signs look like, and then obviously being able to refer them out? So I'm curious, is there any technology that you would recommend a practice looks at to aid in looking at oral cancer?
There is nothing that's FDA approved that will diagnose it at this point. There are salivary tests that will be biomarkers like for HPV 16 or 18. There are, like you said, light devices that will show up abnormal tissue, but it will show up any abnormal tissue, any inflammation. Even a geographic tongue will show up, dark and won't light up. So the technology that they have. So anything that you have is just an adjunct. It is not something that will give you a biopsy, what a biopsy will provide you. You have to do a biopsy to diagnose oral cancer. You can say like, yeah, this looks suspicious. Yeah, I looked it under the light. Oh, I tested you for the marker. You're positive for this. It didn't show up so pretty. That doesn't mean that, no, that just means that, okay, you have something that looks concerning. Let's have a biopsy. Let's rule out that it's not cancer and treat it appropriately.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate you you kind of answering that question, because I was always curious about the technology side of things, because obviously the tech companies come to you saying, "Hey, this is going to help you greatly," and sometimes we as dentists fall for those things. So, so let's go back to, so your brother was diagnosed, you said, at age 30. You said
he had just turned 33.
33 diagnosed, and he passed away at 34.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously it was okay. So it was not a it was a late diagnosis. I'm understanding
late diagnosis.
Okay,
He
got it.
had a stage 2 with node involvement in the neck.
Stage 2 with node involvement in the neck. Okay, got
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And then he passed away at 34, which is how long ago now?
It'll be 4 years, March 14th.
4 years, March 14th. So he would have been 38 now, basically.
39, yeah.
39. Got
Yeah,
it. Okay.
he was shy of his 35th birthday. He was a few months shy of his 35th birthday when he passed, yeah.
Got it. So, as you know, having a young brother pass away, I have had parents pass away, unfortunately, both from cancer. So I know what that's like. But obviously, I haven't been affected by someone who's that young, passing away from cancer. But obviously, it affected you greatly. But you've used that experience that your brother went to probably educate and elevate other people about what you've gone through. So, you know, you mentioned in the comments that you left me, talking about grief and channeling grief as a provider. So can you kind of take that aspect of things and talk about how you've come from where you were to where you are now, and what process you went through, and how you've grown as not only a person but someone who is helping other individuals in the dental industry deal with these issues?
Sure. I mean, grief is a natural part of life, right? It's life and death. And grief comes in many forms in dentistry. It can be loss of you as a practitioner losing your profession. Maybe you have a medical condition and you can no longer practice as a dentist. Maybe you lost your favorite patient because, you know what, they chose to switch practices because you don't take their insurance anymore and they've been coming to you for decades, right? And you decide to be fee for service, and all of a sudden you lost some of your patients. You're losing a worker who, your dental assistant and your hygienist who moved or decided to be a stay-at-home mom, whatever the reason may be, but losing a staff member. So grief comes in many forms in dentistry, and then losing your own family, especially a younger sibling, because that's not how life's supposed to go, right? The older is supposed to leave, and that's kind of what law of nature is. But so it defines the law of nature. So losing Manu it changed my perspective of life, because whatever I thought would happen did not. I was anticipating him telling my stories on my funeral, not the other way around, right? And he was supposed to be there when my parents passed. I lost my dad quite suddenly, right after Thanksgiving, sudden cardiac arrest. And it wasn't something I anticipated. Again, it changed, and it honed in the fact that tomorrow is really not promised to anybody. And just like losing, Robert Big, you mentioned, losing a mentor in the dental industry, a giant, it really alters your perspective. And so grief doesn't have to always be that you lost somebody, but it could be losing a part of the way you perceive life to be, if that makes sense. And then having to show up to work, pretending that everything's okay, and looking at your patient and giving them your full attention. You may be really empty on the inside. I lost my brother right around the time of COVID, and I didn't have that village. I'm a global nomad. I grew up in 5 different countries. So I didn't have this village of grief protecting me, telling me like, oh yeah, remember when Manu did this, or remember these little stories, and having my cousins and my parents even close to me. I had to navigate it alone. And you have to realize that grief is not a journey you have to travel alone. You find the resources, and it got me to reach out, get learning about the process of grief, how it's not a linear process. You are going to be in stages, and it's not, those 5 stages that we have learned about. You can be stuck in a stage, and you may reverse and go back into your depression again, and when you've cleared out of it before you go into acceptance. So it's recognizing those signs, accepting that you can say no to situations or people and places where you are not aligned for it, and really putting yourself first to heal yourself before you can heal others. It's like this concept of the tow truck goes and picks up all the trucks or all the cars that have stopped working, but what if you're broken? So it's recognizing those things and finding your outlet, whether it is you go out for a run, you start exercising, you find a healer, you find medication. I looked into meditation to help me ground myself and focus my energy back to, okay, I need to go and be present for my patients, for my staff, and for my children, for my husband. There's so many aspects of life that life doesn't stop when a tragedy happens. It keeps going, and you just have to make sure you don't fall behind. You keep moving, and you find the help.
And thank you for explaining that and describing your experiences. And I think when we had our debrief the first time we spoke, I think I brought up the fact that there's obviously a couple different types of ways people pass away. One of them is a long illness such as cancer, where you know that it's expected. Then there's a situation with Bob Pick, that he had a catastrophic cardiac event, and he was here today, and then a few minutes later he was gone. Okay. Right. And then there's instances where someone's in an accident. And so I've always wondered, and maybe you can shed some light on this, do you think there's a different type of grief when you have time to prepare for someone to pass away versus somebody who, just literally is here today and gone tomorrow? I've only, I haven't had any, as far as I can remember, anybody that has literally been here today and gone tomorrow, very close to me. Everything has been some sort of disease. So I've had a preparation where we knew it was inevitable. We didn't quite know when it was coming. Obviously, there are signs and symptoms of when death is imminent, and we know that it's sooner than later, obviously. But I've never had an instance where literally someone gets hit by a car, or in this case, they have a catastrophic cardiac event. So again, is there different grief because of that? Is there a different way that people deal with that? So I'm curious if you can shed some light on that.
Yes, and what you're describing is the anticipatory grief, that you are anticipating the person to go. And you know the illness is there. It's coming. You just don't know when. And the sudden loss is also can be held with. That's hard. I have dealt with sudden loss with losing my dad. I talked to him right after Thanksgiving. I spoke to him on Friday, and Saturday I was told he's in cardiac arrest, fly, and I, had to say goodbye to him. There was no warning signs. There was a cardiac arrest, and doctors were like, we don't know why it happened, but it happened. And you have to somewhere find peace in that this is the way it was supposed to plan out. It is a hard process. It's a work in progress. But yes, there are different stages of grief. And sometimes there's delayed grief, like when in a sudden loss, like, when you're not expecting and there was an accident that happened and you were like, what do you mean? Like, it just doesn't even hit you. And at times your body is going to be in like an autopilot, like, oh my God, I have to go to the hospital. I have to go to the morgue. I have to plan the funeral. I have to check off these items. And your body just kind of goes into that zone, like, okay, I need to accomplish all these things. And then it hits you afterwards, like, oh my gosh, what did my body just experience? Your mind will now, process what actually really you did, physically. So there is a whole connection with the mind-body, what you're doing and reacting and how your mind actually processes it. And so there are many different levels of grief. There are other losses attached with losing somebody, because it's loss of, your identity. Like, I lost my identity as an older sister. I became an only child. There is a loss of, if you lose a parent when you're younger, like, in teenage years or as a child, there might be a role reversal where you're supposed to parent your grieving parent, right? There are all these different challenges that come associated. A widower will now have a challenge, maybe a loss of income, a loss of a companion. So there are many types of grief. It's just not grief alone. There are many stages. There are many classifications of grief. And there's a whole process to it.
Like I said, it's interesting as we get older, or as I get older. I'm 51, and I've lost both my parents. My wife has lost both their parents, I should say, my mother-in-law and father-in-law. You kind of wonder, how much time you have left, and it brings things more into reality when you have friends like Bob Pick, unfortunately, again, pass away all of a sudden. So. Let's talk about leaving a legacy. And I think that is, talking about Bob, that's a really good thing, because Bob left a really good legacy here. So can you talk about what it's like to leave a legacy and what it means to leave a legacy? and kind of how we as individuals should look at the things that we're doing and what people are going to think of us when we're no longer here. And I've always wondered. I was talking to my wife after Bob passed away, and I was like, I always wonder what it would be like if I passed away and what people would say about me. And I think Bob would be very proud of what people said about him when he was no longer here. Okay, 'cause
Yeah.
you don't know what type of legacy you have. Bob left a really strong legacy. So
Yeah.
I'm curious your thoughts on that.
So you don't have to live a long life to leave a legacy. You can live a short life, and it's what you do, and it's who are the people that you touch. Because leaving a legacy is not just your actions; it's like a ripple effect, right? Like I never met others, so leaving a legacy goes beyond your actions today. It is about leaving something positive for the world to remember you by. So it could be in your actions, what you do and how you are with people. It could be in what you leave, like perhaps in Manu's case, the book, or a piece of art, in a song, something that will outlive you and your wildest imaginations, right? That will help the generations to come. It'll leave the world in a positive way. So leaving a legacy goes beyond just, oh yeah, I'm doing my thing, but it is the impact that you make from doing those things, and you don't know the people that you affect. It's a ripple effect.
Got it. No. So when somebody is no longer here, what is the best way to create something positive regarding that? Is it to make a foundation for them, have a charitable event for them? Obviously, very big nowadays is to do donations to whatever that site's called, and I can't think of it right now. Where everybody seems to donate. If you can't get into dental school, you ask people to donate to it as well. What is that site called? Oh my God.
I don't think I know
Yeah,
it.
yeah, you do it because people are always asking for donations, and they take a portion of the
Okay.
donations. But I can't remember what it was. But how do you create something positive when someone is no longer here, or in their memory, or to honor them?
It's how you choose to do it. Whether it is a foundation, you can do a nonprofit, you can do scholarships, you could plant trees. You can choose the way you want to honor their life. Whether it is creating like a memory book, something for their children or grandchildren to, sharing stories, getting all these collections of things that made that person, like Bob isn't Bob the way you knew it. There's so many things that led to him being who he became. And so sharing that journey with people who knew him way back then, it's just creating in any way or form that you feel honors that person, where it's meaningful to you. It has to be meaningful to you that you can continue honoring year after year. So you find your way to honor that person.
Got it.
And how-
So you wrote a book called Life Interrupted, Dr. Dua's Survival Guide. So can you talk a little bit about the book and what people can expect and kind of how they can get their hands on it if they want to read it?
Sure. It's available on Amazon. You can go on my website and find it. But so when Manu was battling cancer, it was in the late 2020 when COVID was hit. Borders were shut down between US, Canada. I couldn't travel. He was very limited how many people he could come and see him during treatment. My parents would just drop him for chemo, radiation, and pick him up. There was nobody there guiding him or being with him for emotional support. And so he was alone, but his mind was very sharp, even though physically he was starting to wither down. And so he started chronicling his journey about sharing life's lessons while knowing tomorrow was not promised. And tomorrow is really not promised to any one of us. And to live a life without fear, to live authentically. He found his mistakes and he talked about his mistakes and not having mistakes define you, but rather you becoming a better and a wiser self. So he talked about all these things in that book, and he called it his survival guide, Dr. Dua's survival guide. And the name Life Interrupted comes from the fact that when I walked into his house after his death, in the mail was the Dental Town magazine with his article in it that he had shared with me a couple of weeks before. And I was like, everything's the same. Life has a beautiful way of moving forward, even though when grief hits and you feel your world is just going to stop and you just want it to stop for a minute, people just stop talking, doing, just so you can process of what actually is going on. But life, the birds start chirping, the sun starts rising, things keep going. And his life was interrupted. The rest, everything else was kept going. So that's where the title in the book comes from. And it was he wanted to be published, and he expressed it. Unfortunately, I felt I failed as a sister not to help him get the earlier diagnosis as a dentist, help my parents as a daughter. I failed in so many ways. So the only thing that I could do was make his last wish, which was to compile this book and bring it to the world.
Well, I think that's great. I think that's awesome. And we'll talk about, again, where people can get it in just a little bit. So, you obviously now speak on oral cancer. So why do you think, it's not a topic that we hear about other than really someone going out there and saying, this is how you diagnose it. This is how people don't get on stage and talk about their grief process, what happened, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you think makes you different as a speaker, number one? And why do you think that people need to go out there and speak on the topic, to inform I like to say people speak to inform the conversation. That's why I talk about, that's what I say when people get up there and talk. So I'm curious, why did you feel the need to get up on stage and inform the conversation?
Because I'm a dentist in private practice, just like many people are. And my brother was a dentist, and it's a very unique thing that we were both dentists and there was oral cancer. It's like the shoemaker's shoe's broken. And so fact that signs were missed, things were not diagnosed early on, even though he was in the profession. So what's happening to the public, right? It's bringing that awareness out to other healthcare professionals. Cancer, oral cancer, is not something like here, go check out that lesion, go to the person so-and-so, biopsy it, and end of story. There is more to cancer. And that's where, my oral cancer course is on. I want to give oral cancer a more comprehensive view, and not only just oral cancer, but even other forms of cancer. Cancer is prevalent. Any of us have been affected. We know a loved one, or we know there is limited openings. There may be parts of the face missing. How do you provide oral care to patients who have obturators, who can't fully open and cannot clean themselves, their teeth, who can't chew? There's so many different aspects, nutrition, emotionally. Oral cancer patients have the highest number of suicide rates. They're emotionally depressed. There's PTSD involved with cancer diagnosis. What if the cancer comes back again? Much longer do I have? Will I see my son graduate? Will I be there for my daughter's wedding? There's so many concepts that are always in the back of your mind. And to understand that as a professional, especially as a dentist, we see these patients every 6 months or, even earlier. If you're a family practitioner and you're seeing generations. So what happens, cancer is not isolated to the person who has it, but affects the whole village and around them. And that's what I wanted to bring out into the world. And it makes me unique is because I lost my brother, who is a dentist, to cancer.
That's great. That's great. So anything that we haven't covered yet that you wanted to discuss before we switch over to our lightning round Q&A?
Sure. I was just going to share about the Do a Good Job coaching, where I go into these detailed, and it will be launched out by the time this podcast comes live. So
it's called Do a Good Job, you said?
Do a Good Job. Yep. DUA. It's my pun off my maiden name, and good job. Yep.
Got it. Perfect. So let's go ahead and switch over to our lightning round Q&A, Parul. I'm going to ask you basically 8 to 10 questions. The goal here is to get them done as quickly as possible, so you don't need long, drawn-out answers. Just answer the question, okay? First question, do you have a system in place to keep yourself organized?
I'm trying to get better at Google Calendar and checking it every morning.
Got it. What habits have helped to make you successful?
Being empathetic and meditating. I have to go start my day, clear my head before I start it.
So this is a very interesting question based on the podcast that we just did. What do you think will be your legacy?
That even though I couldn't save Manu, with awareness, I could save other people's lives, that I'd share openly about grief, something that's not openly discussed in the dental field.
God, that's great. When were you a kid? When you were a kid, what was the first thing you wanted to be when you grew up?
An astronaut, work for NASA.
That's great. That's awesome. Let's see what we got here. Let's see. Who would you love to collaborate with in the industry, and what would you love to collaborate on?
In the dental industry or in general?
Just in general.
In general, I would love to collaborate with Dr. Sanjay Gupta from CNN, because oral cancer is it's a multidimensional approach, and so linking medical and dental professionals and really bringing it out into the spotlight.
I think that's great. Who do you look to for advice or mentorship?
I used to look at my parents and my brother, even though he was younger than me. But there are a lot of people in this industry that I do. I mean, if I start naming, it'll be a long list. But I have relied on a ton of people from the dental naturist community and from the mommy dental in business community.
Nice, nice. How do you define success?
To me, success is that I'm able to support my family financially. I'm able to get a good night's sleep without worrying about anything or anyone. And to hopefully retire comfortably one day and create an impact for the world.
That's great. That's great. What book have you read multiple times?
Oh my goodness. I have read, it's called The Orphan Train. It's really a sad book, but I enjoyed that book a lot.
Okay, what have you read online recently that has inspired you?
I have been reading actually about a lot about the Mind Valley. I've been reading a lot of the posts and watching a lot of the videos. Again, it's on this whole perception of mindset.
Got it. Let's see here. What is another question we can ask you? This is a tough question. So if you had to open up a lemonade stand tomorrow, what would you call your stand?
When life gives you lemons, what kind of lemonade would you like to make?
It's good. I like how you connected the dots there. And then the last question I ask everybody, because I like the question, what is one subscription, so something either you pay monthly or annually for, business or personal, that you cannot live without? So one subscription you cannot live without.
Netflix?
Hey, that's a very common answer. I don't disagree with that. So Parul, tell people how they can find out more information about you, how they can get more information about your book. What's the best way to get in contact with you? Give them your Rolodex of ways to connect with you.
Sure. So Instagram at Do a Good Job, DUA Good Job, or my website, ParulDua-Makkar.com. I have some free resources on cancer and grief on the Do a Good Job webpage too, DUAGoodJob.com.
Perfect.
I'm on LinkedIn too. Yep.
LinkedIn too. Yeah. So you look her up on social, you'll be able to find her as well. So Parul, this was great. Thank you so much for enlightening, educating, and sharing your experiences with the audience. I know that we're all being affected by cancer in one way, shape, or form. I'm sorry that you had to go through the experiences with your brother, unfortunately, being a dentist, and obviously you being a dentist. If you like the episode, guys, or you think somebody you know would want to listen to it, please share it. Like us, review us, do whatever you can to help promote the episodes. Remember, we come out Fridays at 5 a.m. Check out the sponsors, both Dental Intelligence and the Doc Sites, and I thank them for their support every single week. And then as my events, Supercharge Your Dental Practice, you can go to superchargeyourdentalpractice.com and use the code RAVING, RAVING, to save $100 on registration. And as I end every single one of my episodes, remember, your reputation matters. Thank you, Parul, for being with me, and we'll talk to everyone soon.
Thank you.